Welcome back to the Backseat Startup Podcast with your host, Andrew Hutton.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Andrew here. I'm on the line with Brad Dominy, founder of Neucards, and excited to welcome you back. The Backseat Startup Podcast is the show where we give advice, solve challenges, answer questions for strangers on the internet. And we'll be getting to that shortly and tackling some challenges that real life people have by finding their questions on Reddit. But before we do that, let me welcome Brad Dominy to the show. Brad, welcome. And it's great to have you here. How's it going?
It's going great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. So I'm excited for us to, like I said, spread some wisdom to startup founders everywhere. But before that, you're building something really cool. We were just chatting before the show about Neucards. Neucards is something that you've been working on for a minute, which again, I really love when startup ideas come from personal pain points, come from the middle of the journey. You're the guy to be building this. This was very much meant to be. So tell us a little bit about Neucards. Tell us what it is, what you're building, a little bit of the journey that led you there, because I think that's pretty fun. And let the listeners get to know you a little bit, Brad.
Sure. So Neucards is a digital contact card. It's an iOS application that you can use to share your contact information with other people. So you can bring up a QR code, you can send them like by airdrop, you can send them a link. The other people, when they receive it, they can just, more quickly get access to all of your contact information. So not just your name and phone number, but you could put all your links in there for your social profiles, your home address, your phone numbers, emails, everything like that. Neucards works on the idea that, you can make a connection with somebody and then keep that connection up to date. So if you have two Neucards users that exchange cards with each other, I bring the card over, and then when you make changes to your card, you can see first who has it, and then you can also, send that new information out to everybody all at once. So you're able to stay in the loop as far as know where your information is, what information's out there, and keep that information up to date.
It's such a good idea. Sorry to cut you off. Just wanted to, voice my interest in this and excitement, because, I think so many people these days are looking for that social network that's not trendy and not exploding images and whatnot. It's just information. It's just staying close to their real connections. Or new connections, but just authentic ways of engaging that don't degrade over time when you move cities, when you switch jobs, and your email goes dead, right? When you lose your phone. This solves for all versions of that, right? So one of the things that you were telling me was the fun story, just how this came to be. Give the short version of that. When did you come up with the idea for Neucards, and how has it kind of manifested into what you're building today?
So the idea of Neucards came more than 10 years ago when I had just started working at a law firm as a developer in their internal, we did a lot of software development inside the law firm. I just noticed that the attorneys were really nervous about their contact information staying up to date. And they always wanted to make sure that if their client information changed, that they'd be able to have it in their contacts. Their contacts were always backed up. They were really concerned about that. I just noticed that the way they did contacts felt really backwards to me, because, people give information to another person, and then it becomes that person's responsibility to keep it up to date, right? And I have to remember that I gave my information to that person, and then tell them at some later point, oh, here's my new address, or here's my new phone number. For people that you're really close to, maybe that's not such a big deal. But for people that you'd still like to stay in touch with, cousins or, college roommates or, aunts and uncles, people like that. A lot of times, you don't realize until it's too late, and you want to send them a, holiday card or something like that you don't have their latest address, or you don't have their phone number or something like that. I really wanted Neucards to be sort of, again, like you were saying, just real basic exchange of information, and have that information always be dependable.
I can just imagine the lawyers and their Rolodexes, just it's their prized possession, and it's backwards, right? They have to go fish for information, and yeah, that cousin analogy of sending a birthday card or a Christmas card is way too, way too real. I think every single one of us is recognizing how much of a pain it is to track down every last address every single year. And that's just one of the use cases. So exciting stuff. Thank you. So I'm glad you put that on the table, Brad, because you've been building this. You're a developer. This is an exciting idea. Let's go turn our attention over to the fun world that is the R Startup subreddit on Reddit.
Sounds good.
Let me
I've been there many times.
I've just started spending time there, and there's some craziness, but at the same time, there's a good amount of interesting questions. You can stay sharp. You can stay, just a little current, and it does what Reddit does, right? So I know you can see my screen now. Here, I'm going to scroll through. I was perusing this a little bit before the show, thinking of some things that are interesting. Let me find some of the ones. Here's one that, so Brad, you let me know if there's a question here that sounds interesting that you feel like you want to sink your teeth into. So I'll read a few out. Accelerator backed out of funding at the last minute. Oh boy, what do I do? That sounds very specific. It sounds very intense. That's a conversation we could have around investor relations, good acting, bad acting. Here's one. What do you think will happen to startups based on OpenAI?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I could generalize that to say, like, how are startups going to react to AI in general? Because it's not just OpenAI, of course, right? It's but maybe they represent the biggest players. All right, does that sound interesting? I think you've got a technical background. This could be really interesting. So, the question here: when the App Store, Internet, etc., were created, many billion-dollar companies were built. Great, good premise. I do agree, right? The sea change that was the internet absolutely was probably actually, if I think about the evolution of technology, the internet and then mobile were the two big paradigm shifts, right? I don't know if you agree with that, but they were at least two big paradigm shifts, if not the biggest. Is AI, do you think a similar thing will happen with GPT, the GPT API, OpenAI, all the different, similar companies, and just the bigger movements? So that's a sizable question for us to bite off. Brad, start us off. Like, where do you go when you think about? And maybe I'll add one last frame because this is the startup advice show. So how would you think about this? Maybe philosophically, but let's bring it home. How would you might advise a startup to think about how AI? To either navigate AI to how it might impact what a founder might do. Anyway, open-ended question, lots to discuss. What do you think?
So, my feeling about OpenAI is that right now it's like there's some really amazing demos as to what OpenAI can do, right? And obviously it's promising to become this technology where you can accomplish, again, big things without having to know a lot more, and you can just interact with it just with natural language, with things like that. The problem I see with building a business around that is how do you protect yourself, right, from other people doing kind of the same thing once you catch something that's really interesting, right? I know there's a lot of ways, and I'm not saying it's as simple as just like, hey, ChatGPT, create me a app that does blah, 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 blah. Because there's a lot of like, work that goes into that blah, 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 blah to make it actually something. But when you become popular or start to catch an audience with whatever tool you build, how do you protect it from copycats? How do you keep, OpenAI from just saying, like, oh, we're going to make that in, version 5.0 or whatever. Like that.
And that's the thesis that people have around AI becoming the next cloud computing or AWS, where, to unpack what I've heard, and I generally think this holds a good amount of water, is you'll have a few big companies, OpenAI, some bigger ones, maybe as Microsoft, or I guess Microsoft and OpenAI, they're in bed together. But, bigger companies, maybe the next OpenAI, will accrue a lot of value because then everyone else across the entire internet will now start to use those, and there'll be a tax, right? Just like there's a tax to use the cloud computing and all the different slices of those different cloud platforms. That's one way it goes. So it just becomes a pure commodity, a utility that enables lots of other great stuff, right?
Mm.
So how do you differentiate? True. No one in the world could say, I'm building a startup. It's running on AWS. That's a meaningless statement, right? That's not valuable. So that's my take on that premise that you put out there. How will you compete? I completely agree.
Yeah. It could end up being like, I'm in California, right? So we had the gold rush that happened, right? And the people who really made a lot of money in the gold rush were the people selling the shovels and the jeans and the horses and the other things and the equipment stuff, because OpenAI will certainly like be a sizable player in our near future, and probably even in the distant future. I mean, I see them being something that's going to like pervade just about everything, right? That all your support, all of your like interaction with companies, like that stuff is probably going to all be filtered into the OpenAI universe, right? A lot of the convenience and like any kind of like concierge kind of thing, right? Where you're trying to like plan out like activities and things like that. This is something where the OpenAI can really help with a lot of those things. And that's what I think people really want. That's what I would like. I'd like a virtual assistant that doesn't cost, $100,000 a year to go and do. Those things.
The picks and shovels is right. I was actually just that my head went there immediately. So I think we're on the same wavelength, which is, if you're a founder and you're living in the moment, build a pick and shovel business, meaning actually I'll throw an example out there. I think there's going to be lots of I think the existing consulting firms are going to make a lot of money. The Accentures up and down the stack, big to small to middle, are going to make a lot of money teaching every other company how to adopt these tools. Because that's what they do. They teach slightly behind the time companies how to use the latest technology, and they make a lot of money. They're going to make a lot of money in this wave. So that's a pure pick and shovel, because you're not developing the technology. You're training it. You're not developing it, but you're deploying it, right? You're delivering it, right? There's going to be versions of that, right? How do you help other firms do that? And then there's going to be like where you were going, which is like, how do you just use it to do the thing that people have wanted for the last decade, and it's been like just away from our fingertips, right? A really good travel planner, a really good, actually one of the founders in day one is building a really good language tutor.
Oh yeah, that'd be perfect for that. Yeah.
So good. So good. Right. And all the different like recording softwares that are going to like do crazy things with our likenesses, with our transcripts, like what's your use case? Right. So I think that's where one of those two directions, if I really am going to be, do you think that founders need to be playing with AI right now? Or is it a shiny thing? Is it the only thing? Is it something in the middle? Like how like existential is this for us in the world of tech?
I think right now it's shiny. I think that the reason it's so shiny is because it's so like appealing, and a lot of people can see what it could turn into. I certainly think that the way it's going to work out is going to like a lot of times be based on where the successes in the consumer market, like just like because the virality is so there, right? Like like anytime AI does something like where they can make Frank Sinatra sing like Gangsta's Paradise or something like that, and like that's an amazing thing that goes out and gets millions and millions of views because it's so impressive.
It's novel. It's that version of like new technology looking like magic. It actually looks like magic these days.
It does, yeah. And I think that's the thing that gets just people like really excited about it, and so they certainly should. I don't think people should just throw it in there on anything. Like my Neucards thing again is a context sharing thing. I don't want to have Neucards.ai or something like that, right?
Even for the flash in the pan boost, like
get some excitement, and maybe investors will be like, oh my god, it's amazing. But in a weird way, I was going to mention one other thing about the AI stuff is that, so the initial excitement and whatever is there. the inevitable turn towards the serious is going to happen at some point too. And that when, people are going to start thinking about the privacy aspects of it. You're going to
Yes.
start thinking about the detection aspects of it. I've seen this already. I have a daughter who's school age and, she's about to start high school. And already, ChatGPT has only been out there for a couple of months in any kind of real sense. And already the teachers are having to deal with like, how do you detect if ChatGPT is writing people's, like papers and stuff like that? How do you, is it a tool like, Grammarly where it's helping them just with the, like the sentence case, like a dictionary used to be? Or is it something that's, like violating ethics and stuff like that? Like, how do people...
the copyright side of things at the professional level, at the school level. And even at the business level, you're starting to it was probably just one article, but it made the rounds with, I'm forgetting the firm, but laying off some people, right? Like the massive rounds of investment, the massive, staffing up as the rest of the tech world was kind of going the opposite direction. Like you said, there's going to be a little maturing, a little reckoning. And I think we might be on, the hype cycle. We might be just over the peak. We might be getting down towards the kind of like real world trough of disillusionment. It's going to get to a really amazing place, right? But I don't know if I'm calling the peak too soon, but it's going to happen, to your point. I completely agree. And so as a founder, don't be the last person to the party is a pretty good piece of advice, right?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, don't be the last person to the party, but also aim high, right? Do the things that are
real.
hard to do.
Yeah.
Because if you try to pick off the low hanging fruit, that's great, and you can get something out quick, and maybe you can capitalize on that. But there's a good chance that there's 20 or 30 other people doing the same thing. So if you have an interest in a certain space, a certain problem you want to solve, and AI would be a great way to try and tackle that. That would be the place to really like focus energy. I think that would be.
And then you can break in, you can build moats, you can do things that a business needs to do, right? Understand your customer, build a product that they really want. Maybe it's powered by AI. Your first thought was someone else is going to do it as well. Well, because the AI is a commodity, but everything else doesn't have to be. Your insights, your brand, your go-to-market, your features, all these other things can be you as a business, as a founder, right? And so
it's going to be
last thought. Add the last thought, Brad, because I think we've solved AI. I think we can just like put it to bed. Everyone else who's listening, stop thinking about it because we just no, please. Last thought, and then I think we'll wrap just to keep us kind of on schedule. But how do we
I think
put a bow on it?
It's obviously going to be a very valuable tool, and I think the people who like have real mastery over those tools are the ones who are going to be the most successful in the long run.
We didn't even talk about the skill angle. You're totally right. It's prompting today. Prompting seems a little weird. I'm not sure it's the skill of all skills, but there's elements to it. So great word to end us on, Brad. A few things to note as we wrap up. Brad, how can people find you, Neucards? How can they reach you, engage? What's the CTA?
So you can go to my website. It's at www.neucards.com. That's NEUCARDS.com. I'd love people to try out the app. I'd love them to download it and try exchanging cards with people. Let me know what the experience is like for you. I was mentioning earlier that one of my downsides, because I have a real focus on privacy, is I can't actually reach out to my customers. I don't know who they are, right? So if you download Neucards and want to contact me at brad@neucards.com and let me know what your experience was like, I'd love to hear feedback. I'd love to find out what I could do better and what would help you to stay connected with the people that are important to you in your life.
I love that mindset. What a good word. And it's real when he literally cannot find you in his own database. So
I didn't think about that when I built the thing.
Brad is not messing around. So let me wrap up. This has been the Backseat Startup Podcast, which, just so you know, is brought to you by Startup Founder Daily, which is a platform to showcase your startup and compete for free PR. So if you're a founder, you really should head over to startupfounderdaily.com and submit your company. And for those of you who don't know me, your host, Andrew, I'm one of the founders of another startup called Day One. And we offer personalized coaching services tailored for early stage founders to help you get close to customers, nail your pitch, map out your next steps for growing your business, raising capital. And you can go over to joinday1.com to check out what we do and how we've helped hundreds of founders over the last few years. So that's us. That's the show for today. Brad, thank you for joining. I think we're getting it just in before the sun goes down and you can't see me anymore. And Brad's over in sunny California where it's beautiful and bright out. But perfect timing. Thank you, Brad, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll see you around.
Thank you so much.